My dad's rich, he can cover it. My daughter shouted across the diner, slamming the check on our table. Heads turned. The waitress froze. He owes us that much for being a lousy father. Laughter crackled from the next booth. A woman muttered, "What kind of man gets ordered around like that?" She had never humiliated me in public before. So why now? What was written on that bill? And why was my name printed under guarantor? They didn't know. I had already emptied that account yesterday, my name, my savings, my silence, all under attack. Who put my name on that debt? How long had this been planned? And why here, in front of everyone? This isn't just a story. It's a truth buried in too many homes. If you're ready to face it, subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. You signed it, didn't you? She said, like it was a joke I should laugh at. Her fingers tapped the bill, then slid the yellow folder across the table like a magician revealing her final trick. I didn't answer. Couldn't. The noise in the diner had dipped into this strange hush, the kind of quiet that turns public spaces into private coliseums. I looked around. No one spoke. No one intervened. They just stared, some with pity, others with open judgment. That's your signature, she continued, flipping open the folder. A photocopy of a contract stared back at me. The name on the bottom looked like mine, but something about the way the R curve didn't feel right. Where did you get this? I asked, voice low, brittle. You gave it to us, she said. Last year, remember? At the birthday dinner. You were 2 glasses in. No, I don't remember, I said. Because it didn't happen. My son-in-law leaned in. We figured you just forgot. Old men tend to blank on the details. I turned to him sharply. Don't you dare. Oh, so now you're offended, he shot back, shrugging. Come on, Pops. You always said you wanted to help us get on our feet. I never said I'd cover your gambling debts, I snapped. Or your failed bar venture. For this medical bill, that last word got her. Her face stiffened. It wasn't failed. And it's not gambling, it's investment. The man sitting behind us let out a sharp laugh, trying to muffle it with his hand. She went red, then stood up. You signed it, she repeated. You're legally on the hook. Don't pretend now. Let me see that folder, she hesitated. Then, like she had something to prove, shoved it at me. Be my guest. The paper was thick. New. Not the kind of thing I would have signed without remembering. I examined the signature. It was neat, too neat. No hesitation, no smudge, no curve of someone pausing before committing to a $1,000 debt. I didn't sign this, I said. She crossed her arms. Then explain that. I pulled out my glasses and held the paper to the light. The signature looked printed, not penned. There was no indentation, no ink variation. Just uniform darkness. My eyes drifted to the bottom corner. Something was off. The witness name? A woman I hadn't seen since high school. My daughter's old classmate. I stared at her. Where did you get her to sign this? She blinked. What are you talking about? You think I'm an idiot? She didn't answer. My son-in-law reached to take the folder back, but I held on. I'm keeping this. You can't just steal documents, he warned. I didn't sign them, so they're not mine. That means someone committed fraud using my name. And that someone might be married to my daughter. Her voice dropped low. You wouldn't turn us in. I've turned the other cheek for 5 years, I said. But today you slapped both. The yellow folder sat on the table between us like a burning brand. All eyes were still on us. Even the manager had stepped out from the back, drying his hands with a towel. Watching the scene unfold like a live show. I'm leaving, I said. Rising, she stepped in front of me. You walk out, she said quietly, and we will take everything. My pulse thudded in my ears. She had never spoken to me like this. Not even as a rebellious teenager. This was different. This was war. I'll see you soon, I said. Yeah, she smirked. At the courthouse. That's not my signature. And this isn't my folder, the waitress whispered to the manager, pointing at me. I hadn't taken 2 steps toward the exit when my daughter's voice pierced the silence again. So leave, old man. You're good at that, aren't you? The whole diner turned. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her tone carried something far sharper, disgust wrapped in confidence, like she had waited years to say it in front of witnesses. And now she had them. I froze. Don't look at him like he's the victim, she told the room, gesturing wide with her arms. This man abandoned us. He left us broke while he sat on a paid-off house and a full retirement account. Rachel, I warned. No, she snapped, her voice cracking. They need to know. He thinks because he's a veteran and a widower that we owe him silence. That we owe him reverence, people began murmuring. A young couple looked uncomfortable. A mother pulled her toddler closer. The waitress whispered something to the manager by the register. He gave a slow, suspicious glance my way. My son-in-law stood up now, puffing his chest. So you raised a good daughter, sir, strong, resourceful, but she's tired of begging for what should have been hers. I turned. Should have been hers? The house, he said, loud enough for the back booths. She took care of your wife. She put her life on hold. And what did you give her? Old war stories and guilt trips. I looked at Rachel. She didn't deny it. Then someone at a table near the window said it. Aren't you the guy from Maple Street? With the big red truck? Another voice chimed in. Didn't he used to coach Little League? Suddenly I was history being rewritten in real time. Every familiar face had now become a jury. I wanted to leave. I needed to. But my daughter wasn't finished. She's not asking, my son-in-law continued. We'll liquidate the property. It's in process. If you've got a problem with that, talk to your lawyer. I said nothing because in that moment I remembered something worse. Rachel still had a copy of the house keys. She must have made the copy the day I let her pet sit when I went to a reunion. Trip last fall. I tightened my grip on the yellow folder still. Clutched under my arm. You went into my house, I said. Trembling now, not from fear, but from the quiet rage of betrayal. You broke in, Rachel smiled. You said make yourself at home. So I did. Behind me someone actually laughed. One sharp, rude laugh. I didn't look to see who. The waitress approached the table. Sir, do you need help? But it wasn't for me, it was for them. Actually, my daughter said, he's done here. He doesn't pay, he walks. That's his thing. The manager crossed his arms. Sir, he said to me, are you okay? I nodded. I'm not the one stealing identities. He didn't respond. Just shifted his weight, unconvinced. My daughter slid a photo across the table. A picture of her and my wife. She would have wanted this, she said. She told me you'd never understand sacrifice. I stared at the image. My wife's face, peaceful, kind. Caught in a frozen memory I never gave permission to be weaponized. I don't know who you are anymore, I said. You do, Rachel replied coldly. I'm the one who never got paid. I stepped back. You really want the house? I asked. Take it. Rachel blinked. What? Take the house? But remember this. I tapped the yellow folder. You'll have to explain everything in here to a judge. She opened her mouth but didn't speak. I left without looking back. But as I pushed open the door, I heard the last words he said. You'll be getting mail soon, old man. Hope you like court stamps. Did they just say, sell my house? My mailbox was overflowing with unopened letters I didn't recognize. I stood at the curb, staring at the pile of envelopes in my hand, thick, pale blue and yellow ones from banks I'd never done business with. Some had red stamps, final notice. Account past due. One had lender escrow urgent printed across the top. I hadn't opened my mail in days. Weeks, maybe. The habit of ignoring things that looked like junk had crept up on me. But now? My name was everywhere, typed clean and bold. I shut the mailbox, walked inside, and locked the door. The house was quiet. Still smelled like the cedar polish my wife used. Her photo was still on the mantel. Same smile I'd seen in that diner photo. I walked past it without stopping. I dumped the letters on the dining table. One envelope, thicker than the rest, had a return address in Dallas. Inside, a debt consolidation agreement I'd never signed. It listed me as the primary applicant. My daughter as co-authorized contact. My blood chilled. I flipped open the yellow folder I'd taken from the diner. It contained 4 documents. Number 1, a debt guarantee. Number 2, a joint account agreement. Number 3, a property equity waiver. Number 4, a copy of my house deed, my actual deed. I hadn't shown that to anyone in years. And yet there it was. Not a scan. Not a forgery. A real duplicate. The kind you can only make by getting into my locked file cabinet. I stood and walked to the hallway closet. Opened the top drawer where I kept the originals. Deed gone, bank backup. Pin sheet gone. Even the fireproof folder was missing. I sat down slowly. Heart hammering, she had it. Rachel. She'd taken it that week I let her check on the pipes while I was at my army buddy's retirement ceremony. I'd trusted her with my keys. I hadn't even thought to ask why she needed them for 3 days straight. I picked up the debt document again. The signature looked familiar but wrong. It was almost mine. But the swirl of the J was off. Rachel always mimicked my handwriting when she forged school notes as a kid. I had taught her cursive. Now she was using it to erase me. The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Harris? A woman said, "This is Julie from First House Lending. We wanted to confirm that you'll be moving forward with the home equity release program next week." "What?" I said. "You should have received a confirmation letter. Your daughter already filed the digital approval form." "I never approved anything." Long pause. "Sir, the file we have includes a power of attorney signed by you. It grants Rachel Harris full authority. I didn't give her power of anything." "Then you may want to speak to our fraud department," she said quietly. I hung up. I walked to my safe. Opened it. Still there, my veteran medallion, my discharge papers, my old wedding ring. But no POA, no backup documents. They'd stolen more than money. They'd stolen access, legally on paper, and no one, not the banks, not the agencies, not even my neighbors, had questioned it. Because who would question the smiling daughter who takes care of her father? My cell buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Hey, might be best if we stop talking until the paperwork's done. This isn't personal, just business. Love you?" I stared at the screen. Love you. She was emptying me and signing the message with love. I walked outside, grabbed the mail I'd left in the box, and carried it back in. One envelope, plain, no return address, fell from the bottom. Inside, a photocopy of the house deed with a sticky note that read, "We can still sell if you don't fight it." No signature. No name, just threat in handwriting. They have everything they need to take my house. My bank app showed 0.0 and a pending property lien. I hadn't touched the app in weeks. I rarely needed to. My retirement checks deposited automatically. My bills were steady and I didn't live large. But this morning something pulled me toward it, like the app was waiting for me to see what they'd done. I opened it. My stomach dropped. Checking. 0.00. Savings locked pending legal hold alert. Lien filed. Real property lien in progress. Pending owner confirmation. I couldn't breathe for a second. Then my eyes landed on the note beneath the hold co-authorized party. Rachel Harris, POA on file POA. Power of attorney. I never signed a POA for Rachel. Not now, not ever. I pulled the yellow folder closer and spread it across the table. I studied every page, then noticed it. The POA form wasn't dated. The date line was handwritten in a different ink. Not blue like the rest of the form. This was black, thin, inkjet maybe. And the signature. It had no indentation, no flow. I traced it with my finger. It wasn't a signature. It was a printout of a scan. I grabbed a flashlight and turned the page sideways. No pressure lines. No stroke variation. Just one perfect flat name. They hadn't forged my name. They'd copied it. I remembered something then. 2 years ago, Rachel had scanned some documents for me on her home printer. Wills, bank statements, pension documents. I'd given her access to my signature file to help. She had saved it, used it, weaponized it. The phone rang. "Mr. Harris?" It was the bank manager. "Just calling to confirm the lien transfer on your home. I never approved any lien." "Well, your daughter's the authorized agent on file. Can't the power of attorney has your signature?" "That's not my signature. It's a print." Silence. I could hear him flipping pages. "Well, we don't verify based on pressure analysis, sir. As long as the name matches the ID and contact info, there's not much we can do unless fraud is reported." I gripped the phone tight. "Then let me be clear. I am reporting fraud. Today." He cleared his throat. "In that case, I'll escalate it to our internal review team. But we'll need supporting documents." "I'll bring them," I said, "in person." Before he hung up, he added, "Mr. Harris, just so you're aware, your daughter also used the POA to apply for a joint medical line of credit. It's linked to your Social Security number." "What?" I said. "The documents say you're co-liable for $14,300 in emergency bills related to her husband's injury." I closed my eyes. I remembered now. Her husband had claimed he fell off a ladder last year, couldn't work for 6 months. But when I'd stopped by during that time, he was playing pool in the garage, drinking beer. Said he was in recovery. You're telling me I'm liable for that? I asked. If the POA stands, he said gently. Yes. I hung up. They used my own name, my own blood, to bury me. A knock at the door. It was Greg, a banker I'd mentored 15 years ago. He looked older now, but still sharp. I'd called him an hour ago in desperation. He stepped inside, sat at the kitchen table, and looked over the folder. This is dirty, he said. I need to fight it. You will. But you'll need more than outrage. You'll need proof. Originals, patterns, any messages or emails that show intent. I handed him a thumb drive. I back up everything. This has texts, calls, even an old voicemail from Rachel bragging about how she could sign for me. He nodded. It'll help. I want to freeze everything. Stop the money. Shut it all down. Greg leaned back. You sure you want to go that far? This is your daughter. I looked at him. She stopped being my daughter the moment she stole my name, he nodded. Then let's kill the pipeline. Unless you press charges, your assets will remain frozen. The ushers didn't hand me a hymnal. They gave me an envelope. It was Sunday morning. I had ironed my shirt twice like I always did. Even polished the shoes I barely wore anymore. Not for vanity, but because I needed something to ground me. Something familiar. The church foyer smelled like lemon oil and hymnals. Light streamed through stained glass, bathing everything in blue and gold. For a moment it felt safe. Holy, then I stepped forward and the usher handed me an envelope instead of a bulletin. What's this? I asked. He blinked. Said it was personal. Asked us to deliver it quietly. I opened it. Inside, legal documents. Petition for emergency conservatorship. Filed by Rachel Harris. Claim. Mental decline. Poor financial judgment. Threat of self-harm. Requires immediate protection of assets and health decisions. I staggered back 2 steps. My heart rattled in my chest. A few people saw. Whispers began. I turned and walked fast toward the side pews, but the damage was done. People had seen the envelope. Seen the seal. Rachel was already seated with her husband. She didn't turn around. Didn't flinch, but her husband did. He smiled. Pastor Kevin stepped up to the pulpit, cleared his throat, began the opening prayer. I couldn't hear a word of it. I stared at the papers in my lap, flipping through pages. Claims of confusion, financial recklessness, even a doctor's note, unsigned, claiming possible early signs of dementia. Lies, all of it. Rachel had submitted this to a judge. I folded the documents, slipped them back inside the envelope, and stood up. I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout. But when I turned to leave, I caught sight of a woman in the 3rd row. Mrs. Tanner. She had known my wife. Visited her when she was sick. The look on her face said everything. She leaned toward the man next to her and whispered, and the whisper spread not just about me, but about Rachel. About what she was doing. Did you see what she filed? Is that even legal? He looked fine to me. By the time I reached the front door, the eyes weren't just on me. They were on her. The fallout had started. Outside, I sat on the bench beneath the maple tree and unfolded the last page of the envelope. A medical invoice was stapled to it. For $1,400. From a clinic in Nevada. I'd never been to Nevada. Never authorized any treatment. Attached was a handwritten statement, allegedly from me. I, James Harris, agree to cover all expenses for my son-in-law's back injury treatments due to familial obligation and past support received. It wasn't even in my handwriting. They forged my voice. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Attached was a photo of my own signature, with the message already submitted. Too late now. We warned you. I looked up and realized the pastor was calling me over. James, he said gently. Can we talk? I know what it looks like, I said before he could speak. I'm not asking you to explain, he said. But people are asking. Rachel's story doesn't match what they're seeing with their own eyes. He looked over my shoulder toward the stained glass. She said you were confused, he added, that you might be slipping. I laughed once, bitter and low. Is this where they bury the living now? I asked. He looked uncomfortable. Maybe you should say something. Not here, but soon. I nodded. I will, but not until they see the whole picture. I stood, shook his hand, and I handed him a copy of the forged POA with the fake date in different ink. What's this? He asked. Proof, I said. The devil doesn't always wear horns. Sometimes she wears her mother's smile. How did medical bills get in my name? I haven't seen a doctor in a year. My banker friend owed me one last favor, and I cashed it in. By Monday morning, I wasn't angry anymore. I was surgical. I pulled on my old leather jacket, grabbed the folder, the forged documents, and the USB backup, and drove 2 towns over to a branch where Greg, my former trainee, now worked as a private account manager. I hadn't seen him in person in nearly a decade, but I'd gotten him his start when no one else would. Today he repaid that debt. I need every connection shut down, I told him across his polished desk. Everything Rachel's touched, cut it off. He didn't hesitate. You want the freeze to hit today? Right now. He opened his laptop and started typing. She's still listed on your legacy contact for 2 accounts. Medical line, joint equity access, emergency trust. I can strip her from everything, but you'll need to sign. I pulled out my pen. Let's go. One by one, I signed the forms that tore her fingers off every lifeline she thought she could pull. No more withdrawals. No more transfers. No more invisible pipelines siphoning off my life. Anything else? Greg asked, leaning back. Yes, one last thing. I pulled a check stub from my inside coat pocket. The final payment I'd sent for the home insurance policy last year. I wrote across it in thick red marker. Cancelled. Then I took a photo of it and slipped it into a plain white envelope, along with a note that said, "This pipeline's closed." Dad, Greg raised an eyebrow. You want to mail that? No, I said. I want to deliver it. By noon, I was parked half a block from their apartment complex. Their car wasn't in the lot. Good. I walked up, tucked the envelope under the windshield wiper of Rachel's Honda, and took one last look at the vehicle. Clean, new tires, paid with my name, my signature. My credit, not anymore. As I turned to leave, I heard a voice behind me. You shouldn't be here. It was their downstairs neighbor. I remembered him. Thick glasses, always grilling on weekends. You're the dad, right? He asked. I nodded slowly. She said you were sick, he added, rubbing the back of his neck. That you were in some kind of memory program. That's why they needed access, I blinked. She told you that? He nodded. Even asked me to vouch in case any mail got sent here by mistake. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, thanks, and walked away. By evening, I got the call. Rachel. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. You think you're clever? She hissed, now hello. No hesitation. You embarrassed us. You lied to the bank. Lied to the court. Lied to our church. You had no right to touch our accounts. Our? You mean my accounts. My property. My name. You're hurting your grandchildren, I paused. That was a new tactic. Don't use them. Don't bring them into this. They need food, clothes, school fees. That's what this was about. No, this was about entitlement. You don't get to forge signatures and call it parenting. Then I'll tell them you abandoned us. You already did that, I said. The difference is I just made it real. Click, she hung up. That night I walked to the fire pit in my backyard, pulled out one last envelope from the folder. Inside, a letter from Rachel sent years ago. Back when she was in college, before the lies, it said, I'm proud of you, Dad. Someday I hope I make you proud too. I held it over the flame. Watched the edges curl and rise like ash ghosts into the dark. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper and found 2 police officers waiting at the curb. One of them held a notepad. James Harris? He asked. Yes. You left something on your daughter's vehicle yesterday. I did? She's filed a complaint. Says it was threatening. I didn't answer. She claims you're acting unstable. She submitted documents. A medical note. The other officer watched me closely. You mind if we talk inside? The next morning, the police were at my door. The officer tapped his pen. They say you left a threat. The officers sat at my kitchen table like they were deciding whether I was a problem to be handled or an old man to be pitied. I chose not to offer coffee. You left an envelope with a cancelled check and a handwritten note, the younger one said, reading from a notepad. Her words were, it felt hostile, intimidating, financial abuse. Financial abuse? I repeated. It was a check I paid. A check I cancelled. And the message? I pulled a copy from my drawer and slid it across the table. This pipeline's closed. Dad, that's not a threat, I said. That's a boundary. The older officer, grizzled and tired, leaned in. Look, Mr. Harris, we're not here to arrest you. Not unless this escalates. But they filed a report and submitted a doctor's note saying you may be mentally compromised. She forged that, along with half a dozen other things, then prove it. I opened my laptop and clicked a folder titled Fireproof. Inside, scanned deeds, my real signature files, voicemail backups, a copy of the forged POA. I had everything organized, dated, time-stamped, but I didn't show them yet. Instead, I handed over one item, a voicemail Rachel left 2 months ago. I pressed play on speaker. "Dad, just sign it, okay? It's easier if you let us manage things for you. You're not exactly sharp anymore. Just let me sign for you. Nobody checks anyway." The room went still. Both officers looked at each other. "Was that her voice?" The older one asked. I nodded. "Why didn't you lead with that?" The younger one muttered. "Because I wanted to see how deep the story she told went." They sat quiet for a beat. Then the older one handed back the phone. "You need a lawyer, not just a folder." "I have one. And this time he's not family." They rose. "We're filing this visit as a wellness check. No charges pending." "But she's pushing hard. She should. Her pipeline's cut off. She's cornered." Before they left, the younger one turned back. "You might want to think about cameras. She claimed you've been stalking her." I laughed once. "The only thing I stalk is my electric bill." After they left, I sat at the kitchen table and watched the wind blow through the trees outside. The betrayal was no longer private. It had crossed into the legal system, onto police reports, into whispers around town. My own daughter had written a narrative where I was unstable, aggressive, and broken, but she had underestimated me, because I had a second copy of that voicemail, backed up on a hidden USB drive. And I wasn't done collecting. That afternoon I drove to the notary's office where the forged POA had supposedly been signed. I walked in, handed the clerk a copy of the document. "Do you keep logbooks?" I asked. She looked at the form, blinked, then frowned. "This name's not in our registry," she said. "We never stamped this." She pulled a magnifier from her drawer, studied the notary seal. "This is a copy-paste job. This seal isn't even real ink. It's printed." Bingo, I thanked her and left. My hands were shaking, but not from nerves, from adrenaline, from the first taste of a weapon I could finally aim back. When I got home, I printed out 3 sets of everything. The voicemail transcript, the fake notary log, the photo of the forged check, the medical bill from Nevada. Each set went into a manila folder with one word written in Sharpie across the front. Counterfire. I wasn't waiting anymore. The next step wouldn't be a call or a conversation. It would be a knock on her door, with papers she couldn't tear up. I had more than receipts. I had a recorder they didn't know about. I slid the USB across the bank manager's desk and said, "Play it." It was a quiet Thursday morning when I walked into the bank wearing my best jacket, the one I hadn't worn since my wife's funeral. I needed every thread of dignity wrapped around me. The branch manager, Denise, had known me for years. She used to wave when I walked my dog past her house, but today her eyes were cautious. "We're in a bit of a sensitive position," she said, motioning to her office. "Your daughter filed a complaint. Says you're harassing her and her husband. Accused of financial abuse." I know what she said. I pulled a small silver USB stick from my pocket. "That's why I brought this." She looked at it, then at me. "What's on it?" "Proof of everything." She plugged it into her desktop, double-clicked the folder named Redemption, then hit play. Rachel's voice crackled through the speakers. "If we get him to sign the refinance, the equity's ours." "He won't even know," her husband laughed. "What about the medical debt?" "We'll link it. Say he approved it." No one checks old men's memories. They just assume. Denise froze. Another clip auto-played. "I have his signature saved from years ago. We'll scan it, print it, and use it on the POA. Then the house is ours." Silence. Then her hand slowly moved to pause the audio. She looked up at me, her face pale. This changes things. Does it?" I said. "I'll need to escalate this immediately. Legal will want a copy. Do you have one?" I handed her a second USB. "Already labeled. Already organized." She stared at it like it was a bomb. Outside her office, a teller had noticed the conversation. 2 more staff had begun whispering. The shift had begun. I stood to leave. "Mr. Harris," she said before I reached the door, "do you understand this might go public?" I turned. "I'm counting on it." The first crack came on Facebook. A neighbor posted, "I heard the daughter forged her dad's signature. My husband works at the bank. He said it's bad." Then came another. "She said he was sick, but I saw him at church last week. He looked sharp to me. Then the grocery store cashier. Then the old man from the diner. Then one of Rachel's old high school friends who now worked in a law office. The whispers became a murmur. The murmur, a storm. By sunset, Rachel had locked her profile. But not before someone screen captured her post from 2 days earlier. When you love someone, sometimes you have to protect them from themselves. Comment beneath it, or from your bank account. I didn't gloat, I didn't post, I didn't say a word, but I did get a call. It was the pastor. James, he said quietly. A few people have come to me. Concerned, they heard what happened. They want to know if it's true. It's worse, I said. He didn't respond. I'd like to speak, I added. Not today, not this week, but soon. I'll make room, he said. Whenever you're ready. That night, a neighbor knocked on my door. Mrs. Tanner. She held a plate of lemon bars. Her hands were trembling. I never believed her, she whispered. Not really, I'm so sorry I stayed quiet. You weren't the only one, I said. We stood in silence. But it wasn't awkward. It was reverent. She handed me the plate and left. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by folders, USBs, transcripts, and I knew what I had to do next. I wasn't just going to stop the damage. I was going to reverse it, strip every layer they'd built. And I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it because they had used my blood to bury me. Now I was going to bury the lie. The lawyer said we had enough to go to court, but I wasn't going there yet. The envelope was heavy, and it had my name in bold. It arrived in a thick manila envelope with a deep red stamp on the corner. Confidential legal communication. Inside, a 6-page letterhead document, signed and sealed by Mark Kessler, an old friend turned lawyer, who still owed me for funding his first bar exam fees 3 decades ago. But today wasn't about debts owed. It was about debts being collected. I read every word of the letter before I sent it. To whom it may concern, this document serves as formal notification that my client, James R. Harris, is initiating civil action against Rachel Harris and Mark DeWitt for the following charges. Then came the list: fraudulent misrepresentation, identity, theft, abuse of power of attorney, intentional infliction of emotional distress, attempted unlawful property seizure, the QC. Final paragraph was the sharpest. This letter constitutes formal notice to seize all actions involving Mr. Harris's property, accounts, or name. Any continued use will be considered criminal and referred to federal authorities. I printed 3 copies, the first I mailed, the second I delivered by hand, to Rachel's apartment door. I didn't knock. I just slipped it under the mat with a second envelope inside, a photo of the forged POA and a screenshot of the voicemail. The third copy? That one I gave to Pastor Kevin. When I handed it to him after Wednesday night service, he looked at the seal, then at me. You're not holding back anymore, he said. They didn't. He nodded once. Would you be willing to speak on Sunday? I'd like that. He placed a hand on my shoulder. You're not alone, James. Not anymore. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered. Rachel. Her voice was unsteady. I got your letter. You read all of it? You really want to drag us through court? I don't want to, I said calmly. But I will. You're not thinking straight. Don't you dare. So there was a pause, then the sound of her husband in the background. What the hell is this? He shouted. She covered the receiver, then came back, quieter. You've always had your pride, Dad, but this is... You broke the law, Rachel. Then why are you giving me a chance to fix it? I said nothing. She begged, don't ruin us. I exhaled slowly. You already did that. By Friday morning, the letter had done its work. Mark DeWitt, her husband, was fired from his job. Turns out, one of the board members at his firm was a deacon at our church. After hearing the tapes and reading the documents, he walked straight into HR with a printed copy. I didn't ask him to. He did it because he believed in truth. Because now, the truth had weight. By noon, I got a text from Mark himself. You just destroyed everything. You proud? I didn't respond. I forwarded it to my lawyer instead. Rachel tried calling again. I let it ring out. Then another message. We're being evicted. They froze the account. Is that what you wanted? Still, I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to speak, not until she stopped lying to herself. That night I passed by the diner, same spot where it all began. The waitress who'd served us that day, she came out for her smoke break, saw me and said, "Hey, Mr. Harris." I nodded. "You okay?" "I'm getting there." She stubbed out her cigarette and said, "She came back in last week, sat at the same table, ordered water, just stared at the chair you sat in." "Did she say anything?" "Only one thing," she said. "He's not supposed to fight back." I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. But inside I felt something shift. They had expected silence. What they got was justice. He shouldn't have said that, because his job depends on me. I waited until the manager picked up. "He still work there?" I made the call at exactly 9:01 a.m. The receptionist transferred me straight to the regional HR director. I didn't give a name, just a question. "Does Mark DeWitt still work at your firm?" She hesitated. "Can I ask who's calling?" "Someone who used to sign his mortgage checks." She went quiet. "Just a moment." 2 minutes later, I was talking to someone else, someone with a deeper voice and a sharper tone. The regional head. "We're aware of the situation, Mr. Harris," he said. "I can't speak to specifics, but we've initiated internal proceedings. You might want to fast-track them." "I beg your pardon?" "He used a forged power of attorney, with my signature. He leveraged a fraudulent medical claim using my name. I have recorded calls, transcripts, and notarized reports. You'll find the court letters arriving today." The line went cold for a beat. Then, "Thank you, sir. We'll be in touch. Formally." By noon, word was out. Mark DeWitt had been terminated, effective immediately. Internal email leaked. Someone forwarded it to me anonymously. "We do not condone financial misconduct nor misuse of power in any capacity. This decision reflects our commitment to ethical conduct." 2 hours later, I heard from my friend at the credit union. Rachel's joint savings account, frozen, their rent overdue. The pending lien on my house, formally withdrawn after the fraud report was verified. Piece by piece, the empire they built on deception started to fall. That evening, I got a call from their landlord. "Mr. Harris," he began, almost sheepish, "I don't mean to pry, but they're claiming you're responsible for the rent." "I'm not," I said. "They forged my signature. I'm already in litigation." Long pause. "Copy that." Then the kicker. "They tried to blame you for the bounced checks too," I chuckled. "Sounds like them." "They got 24 hours to vacate," he added. "I thought you should know." That night, I sat in my recliner, watching the fire dance inside the old stone fireplace I built with my wife 20 years ago. On the mantel sat the final notice I'd found taped to their door last month. Pale pink, bold ink. I had taken it as a reminder, not of their failure, but of how close I had come to losing everything. I picked it up, held it in my hands, and slowly folded it into thirds. Not out of nostalgia, out of closure. The next morning I walked into town for breakfast. The same diner, different energy. People didn't look at me the same. The woman at the register gave me a respectful nod. "Morning, Mr. Harris," she said softly. Someone else whispered, "That's him, the one who fought back." And then another voice behind me. I heard his daughter tried to steal his house, tried to call him crazy. "She's the one who's crazy," the first voice replied. I didn't correct them, I didn't interrupt. I let the truth speak on its own. That afternoon, Rachel called again. No voicemail, just one text. "He lost his job. We lost the apartment. Are you satisfied?" I didn't respond. Not yet. That night, Pastor Kevin called. "I've made space for your testimony this Sunday," he said. "People are asking questions. It might help now to hear your side." "I'll be there," I told him, "but not for them." "No? For me, and for the truth, because they thought I was powerless. They thought because I was quiet I was weak. They forgot I built everything they were trying to steal from nothing. They forgot I wore a uniform when they still wore diapers. They forgot silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. But the worst wasn't the job loss. It was what the church found out. The pastor cleared his throat and said, "There's been a complaint. The sanctuary was unusually full for a Sunday that wasn't Easter. Word had traveled faster than scripture. Something big was going to happen. Not everyone knew what, but they felt it in the way people leaned forward in their pews, how whispers curled beneath the stained glass windows like smoke. I sat in the back row. I didn't dress for battle, just a pressed shirt and slacks. No jacket, no anger, just the truth. Rachel and Mark were seated near the front, faces still, shoulders too square. But I could see it in their posture. They were bracing. The service opened like normal. Hymns, prayer, announcements. Then Pastor Kevin stepped forward and held up a folded church bulletin. "There's been a complaint," he said quietly, eyes scanning the crowd. "And there's been a truth." The room tightened. He looked at me. I nodded. He unfolded the paper, then glanced at Rachel. This week, documents surfaced concerning abuse of power, deception, and the manipulation of someone many of us have prayed with, served with, and loved for decades. No names yet, but no one needed them. A slow murmur rippled down the pews. People looked at Rachel, looked at me. Kevin held up another paper. The forged POA, the taped voicemail transcript. The church has reviewed this information. So has our legal counsel. It has been verified. Gasps. Audible. One woman covered her mouth. Rachel's head dropped. Mark didn't move. Then Kevin folded the papers and said the words that hit harder than any court letter. Effective immediately, Rachel Harris will step down from all ministry leadership. Her membership is suspended pending review, and this congregation will no longer provide cover for harm. He didn't look at her again. He looked at the crowd. "This is not about vengeance," he said. "It's about consequence." I could feel every eye in the church shift again, toward me. But I didn't gloat, didn't nod, just stared at the altar, because that was where my wife used to sing, where Rachel used to play piano, where we once held hands in the front row and prayed for healing. Now I sat alone, but I didn't feel alone. After the service, people approached me slowly. Like pilgrims, James, I didn't know. "She told us you were sick." I believed her. "I'm sorry." "She said you'd gone senile, that you were giving her control." I didn't say much, just nodded, accepted the apologies like loose change in an offering plate. Then Mrs. Tanner stepped forward, her hand trembling. "She used your wife's name," she said. "Said she made promises to her." I never questioned it. "She made a lot of promises," I replied, "but not to my wife." Outside under the same maple tree where I once opened that cursed envelope, Rachel stood with her head down, facing a semicircle of people. A woman asked her point blank, "Is it true?" Rachel didn't answer. Someone else added, "You lied about your own father, that's what this was." Still silence. I walked past her. She didn't meet my eyes. She just whispered, "You really did this?" I stopped. "No," I said quietly. "You did." She stared at the grass like it might swallow her. Even God, it seemed, had turned away. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the church bulletin. The one where Rachel's name used to be listed under ministry coordinator. It wasn't there anymore, just a blank space. I folded it, placed it in the fire pit with the others, burned papers, debt letters, eviction warnings, and struck a match. The flames rose, and for the first time in months I felt light, like the house was mine again, like my name was mine again. They begged for a meeting, but I had something else planned. I brought a briefcase to the diner. She thought it was full of cash. The old place looked exactly the same. Sticky floors, dull lights, napkin holders still missing tops. But the energy was different. Everyone knew. Everyone had heard. I chose the same booth where the whole thing started. A waitress came by. "You waiting on someone?" I nodded. "Two, actually. Let them know when they come in. I asked for this table." She smiled, uneasy. "They're already here." I looked up. Rachel and Mark were standing by the entrance, just inside the door, stiff as statues. Rachel approached slowly, guarded. Mark kept his head down. "You asked for this meeting?" she asked, voice small, brittle. "I did." "Why?" Mark said. "You've already ruined everything." I stared at him. "What you ruined was never mine to fix. Sit down." They sat. I placed the briefcase on the table. Mark stared at it like it might contain his salvation. Rachel's eyes flickered with something close to hope. "You came to pay us off?" she asked. "No," I said. "I came to close the book." I opened the case slowly. Inside was a single manila envelope. I slid it across the table. Mark snatched it open. Inside, a signed property deed transfer to a local veterans support organization. My house. Officially donated. His mouth fell open. "What is this?" Rachel leaned in. "She just gave it away. To someone who won't weaponize my name, to someone who needs it. A Marine named Curtis, lost both legs in Iraq. His kids needed a place to live. Now they have one." "But that was our inheritance," Rachel barked. "No," I said calmly. "That was never yours. You tried to steal it, and now you get nothing." "You'd rather give it to strangers than your own blood," Mark snapped. "You stopped being my blood when you used my signature to bankrupt me." Rachel shook her head. "You're sick." "No, I'm free." She looked around, like she could find sympathy, but the few people eating lunch had gone quiet, listening, watching, just like last time. Only this time, no one looked at me with pity. They looked at them. "What are we supposed to do now?" Mark muttered. "We're homeless." I looked him dead in the eye. "That's between you and the mirror." Rachel tried a different tactic. "Please, don't do this to the kids." I didn't flinch. "You did this to the kids. You taught them theft before trust, lies before loyalty." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "Mom would never forgive you for this." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the last photo of my wife, creased from years in my wallet. I set it down gently on the table. "She would have forgiven you, but she never would have enabled you." Rachel covered her face. Mark stood up. "You've made your point." "No," I said, rising slowly. "Not yet." I placed a small veteran medallion on top of the deed packet, the one from my service, the one Rachel once said should be hers someday. I looked at her. "You don't inherit dignity, you earn it." I turned and left. Behind me, the diner stayed silent. Even the waitress didn't approach their table. They were no longer the victims in this story. They were the authors of their own collapse. Later that night, I visited Curtis, the Marine I gave the house to. He answered the door with two little girls hanging onto his arms. "You really did it," he whispered. "I keep waiting for someone to say it's a mistake." "It's not a mistake," I said. "It's redemption." He hugged me, not out of gratitude, out of respect. That night I walked home to my small apartment and hung up my coat. I no longer owned a house, but I'd never felt more at home. She dropped to her knees, but this wasn't forgiveness, it was collapse. The voicemail was just sobbing, followed by, "Please, Daddy." I didn't check the voicemail right away. I let it sit overnight, blinking like a soft wound on my phone screen. There had already been 4 missed calls before that one, 3 texts, 1 email with the subject line, "Just listen." By morning I played it. The voice that came through wasn't the girl I raised. It was someone cracked, cornered, desperate. "Please, Daddy, I was wrong. I see that now. Just help us, just one more chance. He's not the same, I'm not the same. I thought I was protecting us. I thought Mom would have—" The rest dissolved into sobs. No full sentence. Just memory fragments dressed as apologies. I didn't save the voicemail, I didn't delete it either. I let it sit. A reminder by noon, a knock at my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and didn't need to open it to know who it was. Rachel stood on the other side, holding a plastic grocery bag and a photo album I hadn't seen since the funeral. I opened the door a crack. "Can we talk?" she asked. "I think we've done enough talking." She nodded, eyes red. "I just want to explain. You had the whole town for that. You had church, the police, the bank." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was doing what was right." "No, Rachel, you thought I wouldn't fight back." She blinked. "I didn't come to argue." "Then why are you here?" "I don't know," she whispered. I thought you might still love me." I let that hang there. Not because I didn't feel something, but because she needed to feel the cost of everything she'd cashed in. She held out the photo album. "I brought this. Mom's letters are in the back." I took it silently, flipped through the pages, old birthdays, 4th of July cookouts, her wedding. Then, between two thick sleeves, a folded letter on pink stationery, my wife's handwriting. I read the first few lines. If you're reading this, I'm probably already gone. So I'll keep it short. Protect her, James, even from herself. I paused. It didn't say, forgive her no matter what. It said, protect her. And sometimes, protection doesn't mean stepping in front of a bullet. Sometimes, it means letting someone feel the weight of pulling the trigger. I can't give you the house, I said quietly. I know, she replied. I can't erase what you did. I know that too. I won't come to court. But I won't stop it either. Her chin trembled. So this is it? I nodded once. She stood there for a while, then placed the grocery bag at my feet and turned away. When she reached the stairs, she looked back. The groceries are for you, not a trick. I didn't respond, just closed the door. Inside the bag were canned soup, apples, and a bag of my favorite coffee, hazelnut blend. I stared at it, then tossed it in the pantry without a word. Forgiveness isn't always a door you reopen. Sometimes it's just a window you close. That night I visited the lawyer one last time. We updated the will, removed Rachel, removed Mark, finalized everything. The estate, what was left, would go to two places. The Veterans House, now under Curtis's name, a charity scholarship for single fathers. When the lawyer asked, want to leave a letter with it? I said no. She'd written her story in forgery. I'd written mine in fire before bed. I pulled out an old family photo from the album. Rachel on my shoulders. My wife laughing behind us. I burned it. Not out of hate, out of peace. It was time to stop carrying what had already been dropped. The pastor invited me to speak next Sunday. I said yes. I walked to the pulpit with my old veteran's jacket zipped up. The church was packed. Not just with regulars, but with folks I hadn't seen in years. Some came out of curiosity. Others, guilt. But most, I believe, came because they needed to see how it ended. The man they were told had lost his mind was walking up the aisle with his head high and voice clear. I didn't carry notes. Didn't need a speech. Just wore the jacket I'd kept in storage since my last Memorial Day service. Still smelled like gun oil and salt. Still fit. And inside the front pocket was my veteran medallion, the one I'd reclaimed from that briefcase moment. The congregation fell quiet as I stood. Behind the pulpit, I scanned the crowd. Rachel. Wasn't in her usual seat, but she was there, standing in the back, near the exit. No spotlight. No friends. Just silence, I began. I was asked to share my story. So here it is. I trusted my family. And they betrayed me. I gave access. They forged documents. Claimed I was confused. Claimed I needed protection. They tried to steal my house, my money, my identity. But it wasn't just about property. It was about dignity. A rustle passed through the pews. I continued. They used my silence against me. Thought I was too old, too slow, too proud to fight back. They were right about the pride. Wrong about everything else. A few people nodded. One woman whispered, Amen. I looked toward Rachel. She didn't move. My daughter said she was doing it out of love. But real love doesn't sign your name on fake debt. Doesn't use your legacy as collateral. Real love protects. More nods now, more shifting. She tried to take my name, so I took it back. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the veteran medallion. I walked slowly to the altar and placed it gently on the edge. For those who served, this medallion means more than metal. It means identity, honor, proof. I turned to face the crowd again. I don't need a courtroom to prove who I am. I need this moment. Because now, you know the truth. The applause didn't come right away, just silence. Wait. Recognition. Then the pastor stepped forward, eyes glassy, and placed a hand on my shoulder. You have nothing to prove. James, you already did. After the service, I stood outside under the same tree where I once opened that forged envelope. This time, no one looked away. A few hugged. Some shook my hand. Even those who had once whispered doubt now nodded with respect. Rachel approached slowly. No words, just tears. She looked at the medallion through the open church doors. I waited for her to speak. She didn't, so I did. You came. She nodded. Not for you, she said. For the truth. I looked at her. That's a good start, but I didn't invite her home. I didn't offer reconciliation because this story wasn't about her redemption. It was about mine. That night, I sat alone in my new apartment. Small, simple. The kind of place where no one could steal anything. Unless I let them. I hung the new deed from the lawyer on the wall, not for the house I gave away, but for the life I reclaimed. And on the shelf, next to my late wife's photo, was the medallion, polished, scented, framed in glass. Under it, engraved in brass, James R. Harris, father, veteran, survivor. Rachel stood at the back of the church while the congregation applauded, not for her, but for the father she tried to erase. Before you go, tell me, if your own child tried to erase your name, would you give them another chance?